Welcome to Dark Minds, Stories of Serial Killers. I'm Victoria, and here, we explore stories that unveil the darkest sides of human nature. Today, we delve into a case that shook Michigan, leaving families in pain and a community in shock. Kenyel Brown, a seemingly ordinary man who, in just over 2 months, unleashed a wave of violence across 3 cities in Wayne County. From December 2019 to February 2020, Brown left a trail of terror, taking lives without mercy. And what's most unsettling? He wasn't supposed to be free to commit these crimes. Prepare yourself for an intense story where negligence, system failure, and brutality collide. If dark stories like this captivate you, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Every interaction helps spread the truth and keep the memory of those affected alive. Subscribe to Dark Minds and join us as we dive into shocking discoveries and painful lessons. What drives a person to cross the limits of morality? With every dark corner and every wary glance, an ominous presence reminds us that evil may be closer than we imagine. Today, we're going to explore the mind of one of Michigan's most feared criminals. Kenyel Brown, a man who walked freely among us but carried a dark secret. 6 lives taken in his wake, each a soul who had no idea of the horror that awaited. With each life stolen, the devastation rippled across Detroit and Wayne County, transforming the community's sense of safety into one of grief and uncertainty. Get ready to immerse yourself in a story that is both painful and terrifying. To understand how someone could become capable of such brutal acts, we need to look at the early years. Kenyel Brown was born into a harsh reality, a childhood marked by hardship, rejection, and violence. From an early age, he faced an environment where affection was distant, replaced instead by coldness and a constant struggle to survive. Family members and those who knew him recount stories of a lonely boy who searched for acceptance, only to be met with closed doors and a painful reality. Instead of warmth, he found disdain and a cycle of conflict and abuse. As time went on, the suffering he endured transformed into something much darker. Psychologists studying cases like Brown's often find patterns of antisocial personality traits, marked by a lack of empathy and a disturbing capacity to manipulate and destroy without remorse. These traits began to surface in his adolescence, as he became involved in petty crime and escalated to acts of greater violence. Kenyel developed an impenetrable mind, where there was no room for guilt or regret. What started as a survival mechanism morphed into a desire to control, and eventually to destroy. Reports suggest Brown exhibited impulsive and aggressive behavior, traits that grew with him and would later shape his path. But to him, the world was a cold place, where every action was justified as a response to his own pain. These traumas sculpted his personality, and with every new crime, he seemed to reaffirm his role as a distant and dangerous figure, capable of leaving a trail of devastation without hesitation. But Kenyel Brown didn't stop there. His need for control and power only grew, driving him to commit a series of murders that shocked the community and exposed the failings of the justice system. As we continue, prepare to discover how his choice of victims and his methods reveal the depths of his troubled mind and the impact of his actions on so many innocent lives. What makes Kenyel Brown's crimes even more chilling is the coldness with which he selected and eliminated his victims. In just 3 months, he took the lives of 6 people in attacks that seemed as calculated as they were merciless. Brown didn't appear to follow a specific pattern of victims. He chose those who crossed his path, ordinary people, lives brutally and suddenly taken. Some were acquaintances, others total strangers, but they all became targets of a mind that sought only to dominate and destroy. With each murder, he showed a complete lack of remorse, as if human life held no value at all. Investigations revealed Brown's preference for quick and direct attacks, using firearms to ensure his victims had no chance of survival. His precision and speed pointed to a terrifying familiarity with violence, as if he had become accustomed to killing, now viewing brutality as a form of control. Wayne County became an area of constant fear, with each news report of a new murder amplifying the community's sense of insecurity. Authorities were desperate to locate and stop a killer who always seemed one step ahead, while the community felt the weight of an invisible enemy among them. The terror spread, and the question lingered: why had no one been able to stop him? How had a man known to the police continued acting with impunity? Brown had exploited the system's failures, turning parole into an opportunity to spread terror. His strategy was brutal simplicity: a quick attack, a clean escape, a new life destroyed. Kenyel Brown used every weakness in the system to his advantage, and his victims paid the price in blood. Amid the chaos, he thrived on the desperation of the authorities and the vulnerability of a community that no longer knew who to trust. Kenyel Brown began his killing spree in December 2019, a time that, for his victims and their families, would become a true nightmare. The violence he unleashed, seemingly without reason and without remorse, began to spread fear across the cities of Detroit, Highland Park, and River Rouge, where he would strike and disappear quickly, leaving a path of destruction behind him. For every person he killed, entire families were shattered, communities stood paralyzed, and Brown continued on, free, in a relentless cycle of violence that intensified with each new crime. As the days passed and the number of victims grew, desperation mounted. Authorities were trying to track him down and stop him, but Kenyel Brown always seemed to be one step ahead. In less than 3 months, 6 people had been brutally murdered, and the similarities in the methods quickly caught the police's attention as they recognized a chilling pattern. However, the investigators faced a dilemma. They knew who the suspect was, had a clear record of his criminal activities, yet still couldn't stop him. Brown exploited every loophole in the system and repeatedly escaped capture. A sense of helplessness began to spread among the officers, while affected families searched for answers. They wanted to know how a man like Kenyel could remain free, even after so many crimes. Each new attack was a brutal reminder of the system's failures that allowed him to roam free. The string of deaths led to an unprecedented wave of public outrage and pressure on Michigan authorities, who now faced criticism for their apparent inability to halt his reign of terror. The streets of Wayne County were filled with a palpable sense of fear, and Kenyel Brown's name became synonymous with pain and loss. The impact of his crimes extended beyond his direct victims, affecting an entire community and sparking a deep distrust in the justice system. In late February 2020, after months of fear and frustration, authorities finally managed to locate him. But the capture would come at a tragic cost. The hunt for Kenyel Brown reached its peak on February 28, 2020. After months of a race against time, the police finally caught up to him. Cornered and with no way out, Brown faced a final choice. One last decision in a life marked by violence and chaos. As the authorities closed in, Kenyel took a drastic step. He raised a gun and pointed it at himself. The sound of the shot echoed through the scene, sealing the fate of a man who had taken so many lives and left countless families in agony. Brown ended his own life before he could face the legal consequences of his actions. For the families of the victims, this outcome brought a complex mix of emotions. The killer was dead, but formal justice and complete answers had been denied. The families, already devastated by their loss, now faced a new reality. Without a trial, without explanations, only unanswered questions remained, and the pain of a story abruptly closed. Every parent, sibling, or friend of the victims carried the weight of a grief that would never be fully resolved. They sought solace, but they knew they would never see Kenyel Brown formally held accountable. He had, in some way, escaped the formal consequences of justice. For authorities, Brown's case became a symbol of the vulnerability within a system meant to protect and prevent. It was a failure laid bare before society, a reminder that something had broken, and everyone's safety had been compromised by a mistake that cost lives. The tragic conclusion to Kenyel Brown's story left scars not only on the victims' families, but also on the public's trust in the authorities. How could someone with such a dangerous past walk free and unsupervised, causing so much suffering? This case raised questions that still echo today, leading to a critical review of Michigan's policies on supervision and release for violent offenders. For the communities in Michigan, Kenyel Brown's scars remain visible not only in the memory of their losses, but also in the transformation of a system that was forced to confront its own failings. The pain is real and still alive, as every family and a whole community try to deal with what was left behind. The story of Kenyel Brown is more than a series of murders. It's a tragedy that exposes the fragility of the structures that are supposed to protect society. For the victims and their families, the journey didn't end with the killer's death. It continues in every day they try to rebuild their lives amidst the pain. This case became a symbol of how a failure in the system can open doors to a wave of suffering. It makes us reflect on the importance of responsibility and the need for change so that something like this never happens again. We say goodbye today with this thought. How many other similar stories are still waiting for justice?